Shall we play a game?
Hello everyone, welcome back to Vintage Gaming Memories. This is the fourth installment of the series called Flashback 40 with Antics and Analogs. This is where I go back 40 years to the month of those two magazines and hit on various topics within, and I'll type a program or two along the way. I mentioned this in last month's video. I have a personal streak of making connection to at least one person who was mentioned in either the Antic or Analog magazines from 40 years ago for that particular month. The October 1983 issue, I connected with Andrei Persitsky, who was a 12-year-old programmer that had his mountain skiing game published on 2 pages in that issue. The November 1983 issue, I connected with Gerald Madden, who had his question published about how to start his BBS. And then in last month's December 1983 issue, I connected with Dean Bears, who was a 15-year-old programmer that had his auto line numbering program published. That was a pretty cool program too. I found it great to chat with them and bring back those memories from 1983. Let's just see if we can make it 4 in a row with these 2 issues. As we begin our journey into 2024 in present time, I'll jump back in time to begin 1984 with the January Volume 2, Number 10 edition of Antic magazine. And we also have here the January Number 15 issue for Analog Computing magazine. So let's start with this Antic one first. I'll move the Analog to the side for now. And we'll talk about Antic. So let's begin by looking at this cover. Now I truly remember this edition. The message in the bottle here, and you have a printer. It looks like an Atari 1027 printer inside the bottle. And then what catches my eye here is the Snowbird Game. I remember typing that in and playing it. There's a telephone pole and some other stuff. I forget the true objective, but I do remember that name. And then you can see here, this is the Atari Printer Survey edition. So it's a special printer issue, which we'll probably have a lot of printers to talk about in this one. So let's just jump right in. So right away, the first page I turn into is this Trak Advertisement. I swear, it's this ad and the Indus one that will always be burned in my memory. I never had the pleasure of owning either of them as a kid. I have a few Indus drives now, but not a Trak one yet. So have any of you got your hands on this Trak or had it as a kid? I always found that anything with digital numbers, like right here for the track counter, was really cool instead of just having an LED flashing or steady on like the 1050 I had. So this was kind of like the Cadillac for me, and I wish I had one. All right, so here we are again at the I/O board section. I like the suggestion mailed in by Bruce Whiteside from Woodridge, Illinois. It's about 20 miles from where I grew up. So he provides this great tip for those having issues with the Thorn EMI's Jumbo Jet Pilot game with their 1200XL. The physical cartridge case needs to be slightly modified in order to properly seal in the slot. And there's like a nice visual here you can see step by step on how to do this. I'm not sure if he provided that or if Antic put that in there for him, but nonetheless, that's a pretty cool detail for back then to show you how to do something as far as using an X-Acto knife and modifying an existing card to make it work for your computer, specifically the 1200XL. Oh, I love this reader submission here called Reach Out. So this comes from Randy Raymond in Dunkirk, Ohio, it says. So Randy describes a family trip to see friends in another part of the country. But on the trip, they stop at an Atari store to trade programs with someone and to possibly make a friend or two. Now, the cool thing is he says that he did make a friend.
Did we just become best friends?
A computer pal, he calls it. So it sounds like they traded programs and ideas through the mail, not email, that is, since the internet we know today wasn't around, but through postal mail, so through snail mail. So his suggestion to Antic was to start a new section for people who might be interested in finding computer pals. Now, Antic here says that they would consider starting such a service and asks readers how they would like to see this section operate in the magazine. One suggestion Antic makes is asking if they should randomly reroute people's computer pal letters to other readers who are interested in making new computer friends. Now, that sounds pretty crazy. It's sort of like a precursor to what we see now with online interest group sites. So I wonder if this ever took off. I don't recall, but I'll have to see as we go further in these issues. Now, I've seen this ad for the game, The Return of Hercules. I've never played it, but from the one screen image on the ad, it gives a little bit of an Ultima vibe. I don't know. I have to see a little bit more, but have any of you played this before? Now, I think this looks interesting. This is called Trivia Question Quiz. So apparently it gives you the skeleton of a Q&A type of program that can help you memorize things. So just looking at this, you supply the questions and answers and it'll quiz you, it looks like. I believe the answers should be short since it's going to look for you to match the answer for it to be considered correct. So no, essays on the answer side. Let's just type this one in and see how this one works. Okay, I'm on my last line here, and let's run. Type the user's name, please. All right. Question 1, 4 plus 2. Now type the correct answer. We'll do this one correct. A little chime there for that, a little sound. Question number 2, press return. 1 plus 1, we'll put 3. Different sound if it's wrong. The answer to 1 plus 1 is 2. I like the top, it gives you percentage, correct, 50%. 2 questions, 1 correct. Question 3, we'll put 7. There we go. That's a fair score. Study harder. You could do better than that. Goodbye, Chris. Yeah, I know goodbye should be with an E, but that's how it was spelled in the program, so I just typed it exactly as is. Pretty cool program, though. So let's look at the data lines, which are the questions and answers. They start at line 1000 through 1020. That's just the 3 questions you have in this program. You can add more, and if you were to do that, you have to change what is listed in line 170. So instead of 1 to 3, if you have 5 questions, it'll be 1 to 5 and so forth. But for line 1000, let's just change that to a question that would be more wordy. So let's do something, I don't know, we'll put quotes so it could take it. So because there's going to be spaces in my question. How about what day comes after Monday? And then the answer would be Tuesday. And we'll run that. There you go. What day comes after Monday? And of course, you have to type it correctly with, no typos and no spaces, because that is going to be exactly what you put in that data line for it to be correct. So it's a pretty cool program, I would say. I mean, it's a nice way to help you remember things or to even quiz you on certain questions where you can give easy answers. Because if you have anything that's wordy, you have to make sure you type exactly what you put in that data line. But it's pretty nice. I guess that would be good if you didn't have anybody to do flashcards with you. All right, so let's get back to the magazine. Well, here's a printer-related article. This is on the printer dip switch. And I do like how they make sure you know that DIP is an acronym that stands for Dual Inline Package, which means there are many on and off switches in a row. It gives some great insight as to what some of the typical printer functions that are controlled by those dip switches. Some mention are whether the computer will send a carriage return for a new line or will it also do a carriage return and a line feed. The dip switch can also change the font on some printers as well as the character language set. Basically, it's a nice little article to bring awareness to the dip switch and a reminder to not make dip switch changes while the printer and computer is turned on. It kind of states that right here. Always turn off your printer and computer when setting dip switches. Serious damage can occur if power is improperly shunted within the printer circuitry. Besides, you might get a nasty shock. Well, here is a nice 6-page spread, printer survey it's called. They look at 9 different printers to give the reader some insight to which one might best suit their needs. Now remember, back then there wasn't much emphasis on printing as it was on the method of loading software such as disk drives and downloading on the fastest modem. Printers eventually were essential, but the market had so many options which can make one shy away from it. And that was sort of like my problem. I didn't really know what printer I needed or if I even needed a printer at the time. And this was before I ran my BBS. So I really put more time and emphasis on my media loading peripheral, which would be the 1050 drive, and that was instead of the 410 tape. And then also for speed, that was another thing. I wanted to have fast modem speed, so I put time and money into that. On this review, they do a good job of the variety being reviewed. There's only one Atari model on the list, which is the Atari 1027. But what they do is they touch on the key components for each one, and then they note whether it's available or not. Also, some measurements are done on characters per second, characters per inch, and even cost for the ribbon. At the end, there is not a first, second, or even third place determined. It's just pure facts, and then you can decide what makes sense for you. A lot of good information in here for the reader to decide. And here we go again. Another article revolving around printers. This is specifically on the Epson MX series of printers. It mentions how the Epson printers are considered reliable, versatile, and a great complement to any Atari computer, especially when it's equipped with the GraphTrax option. But it also notes that there are some issues with Epson's responding to script commands with Atari Writer or the Atari word processor. So in this article, they provide these 2 tables here with codes that you would enter to activate various modes in the 2 word processors. So for example, you can see here how you would turn on and off the italics when you're using the Atari word processor. First you would initiate the procedure by pressing both the control and the insert keys together, and then you'd enter a code to turn it on, which is escape and 4, and then you close it off the procedure with the escape 5. So that's how you would wrap it, basically. And the same concept with wrapping the text with the code on the Atari Writer, you would have to initiate the procedure first. For this, let's say italics mode again. Instead of doing a control insert, you do a control O, and that's how you would begin your procedure, and then you do the actual code that would turn it on, and then you wrap it with the off option to close it. Just a nice cheat sheet to have if you're using Epson with one of these word processing software. This is a really cool tool. I definitely overlooked this when I got this issue 40 years ago. It's called Typer's Toolbox, Return to Paradise. So this is from Stephen Bobolski, and I love how he begins this. Let me read what his words are. In November of 1981, I brought home my new Atari 800 computer and experienced a major lifestyle change. It was the end of going to bed early. I was very proud of my new pet that performed tricks and played games. My spare hours went to hunting in computer shops for anything that contained an article or program written for or about the Atari. 15 months later, with 32K of extra RAM, a disk drive, an A50 interface, a printer, and a subscription to Antic, I'm doing things with my 800 that I really never dreamed of when I bought it. Data files, word processing, mailing lists, and of course, great games. For many of these applications, commercial software is fine, but I have found that typing in public domain programs from magazines is not only rewarding, it's practically free. Totally agree to that. And you know what? It helps your typing skills, and you need that for your job when you get older, because it did pay dividends for me. In this article here, he goes on about how the most time-consuming part with programming or typing in a program is with the numbers when they are all in a data statement. Now, I can concur with that. I think that slows the flow down when you're typing in code. But, as he notes, the best games contain a good number of data statements, so you have to push through it. What Stephen had created to ease the pain is this cool tool that when you run it, you can type in your normal code of program, but when you get to the data statement line, all you have to do is type in the elements and press return one time after each one of those elements. So, say your data line starts with 233, 40, 176, 2, and so on and so on. So instead of worrying about all the commas, all you do is type the number and press return. So for example, 233, enter, or return. 40, return. 176, return. 2, return. Don't worry about the commas. Don't worry about spacing. Don't worry about putting the word data on that line. Because once you press return twice, it will insert all the commas and it will put the word data in the beginning of that line. And it also works with data statements containing word values. So if you have a string of words blue, red, green, just type blue, return, red, return, green, return, and double return. It will actually put it all in one line for you. Pretty cool. What a great idea of making typing code more efficient and less of a burden. I wish I had this in my back pocket when I was younger. I didn't realize there was something like that. So here's another article by the managing editor, Robert DeWitt. This is pretty good information that they're providing. Basically, it's how to make a printer cable. Now, back then, it wasn't as easy. You couldn't go on the internet and figure that out. So if you buy Atari, you will get the cable, but other printer manufacturers will require you to purchase it separately. So there's a cost involved. In order to save some money, you can make one with their guidance, and they give you a pin layout on the connection itself, which is listed here. Definitely a nice little cheat sheet, or good to have if you want to start making your own cables and saving some money. And here we are to the first game in this issue to type. As I mentioned earlier, it is called Snowbird. Now let's get right into this one because I can't wait to relive it. Okay, I have one more line left and I should be ready to run it. Let's run. All right, let's do level 1. So this brings back memories. So there I am. I am the snowbird that's perched on top of the telephone pole, and that black thing going across the screen is a water rat, and below that is the lake that I have to avoid falling into. So my goal is to get these water rats, 20 of them per round, and every time the water rat goes across, you'll see it making a hole into the ice. What else is there? Oh, the levels will get harder, obviously, and after I think it's the 5th level or 5th round, you do not need to get 20, it's only 15 of them. And as you just saw there for a second, the water rat turned white. If I land on that when it's white, it's worth 1,000 points, whereas if you get it while it's black, it's 100 points. So I push my button in order for me to fly, and if I let go of it, I just descend down, and of course I want to avoid that water. And there you go. There's a little bit of an ice crack, as you can see there, that blue water opening. That's what happens when the rats appear. So let's try to get 20, and I'll show you what happens at the end of 20. It's a pretty cool effect. So there, I got a white one. It was worth 1,000. And as you can see, if the water rat goes across and lands in one of those other holes, it goes back into the lake. So you lose your opportunity to get it, which makes it more difficult if there's more and more of these holes in the ice, just like that. Like that one there will go in again. So it's starting to get cluttered here. I got to clean up this level pretty quick. I think I need 2 more. So how's that? That's the ice sweeper. It cleans up all the holes, and now I start the next level. I won't continue with this because it does take some time, but you get the idea. It's a pretty neat game. Very basic, no pun intended, but I always like this. Now here's what happens when you fall into the water, just so you hear the sound. And that's the end of the game. You don't have another life. It's just what you get accumulating in points before you fall into the water. So that is Snowbird. Hope you enjoyed that game. So here we are, another favorite section of mine in this magazine called New Products. Let's see what interesting things they have this month. First thing I see here is this K cover. It's a keyboard protector. I see the value of this more than with today's keyboard. You know, keyboards in the 80s were part of the computer, so a spill could be fatal to your system. But today, you know, your keyboards are just an extension of the PC, which is probably why so many of them look like people are using them as a plate. Pretty nasty. Anyways, for around $9.95, $10, that might be worth it. So on the next page here, there's this book. It's called Games for Your Atari Computer. Now, I'm collecting vintage Atari books as well, so I have to check this out. I don't have it yet, but I will probably end up getting it. It doesn't really say how many games are in there in this product review, but I did look it up, and there's about 25 or so games in there to type. But it seemed like it was a success in England, so that's enough to get me to buy it. I'll have to do a separate video just on my vintage Atari books from the late 70s through the mid 80s. Those are pretty cool looking to see and just kind of relive, sort of like what we're doing here with these magazines. Product reviews, here we are. Another favorite section of mine. So let's see, we got Popeye here from Parker Brothers on cart for 50 bucks. Now here's one. This one's called In Search of the Most Amazing Thing. I don't recall this game back in the 80s, but after reading this, I understand the goal is to find the most amazing thing in the entire galaxy that your old Uncle Smoke, had found at one time, but then he lost it. Sounds like a cool adventure game. You can actually still get this on eBay for a decent price for around $20 with the complete package. So you get all the material that you need to play this. Comment down below, though. Let me know if you've ever played this before and what you think of it. I don't know if I'll end up picking it up. Looks like we're coming to the end of this issue of Antic, and that's actually a pretty nice way to end it. It's a pretty cool reminder where Atari stands. So they were the official home computer of the 1984 Summer Olympics. Now that would be the one that was held in Los Angeles, California. President Ronald Reagan officially opened the games. Carl Lewis participated in his first Olympics, and he took 4 golds. But my favorite memory, because I grew up in Chicago, was this 6'6" guard from North Carolina who participated in his first Olympics on the U.S. basketball team and took gold before he reunited again in the 1992 Olympics with what is known as the Dream Team. And yep, that is him, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. All right, well, now let's see what's in store with the January 1984 Analog issue. So this is the Analog magazine from January 1984. The cover art is to the point, actually. It's got a background of a PCB and the Atari 600 XL front and center. So let's look inside. I like this about the cover. So here's some background on the cover art. So they posed a question here. Will the 600 XL start a new era of Atari computer products? I have a 600 XL today, but no offense to those 600 owners, but it never was an option for me back in the 80s when it came out with the 800 XL. The 16K of RAM compared to 64K on the 800 XL, along with reviews calling the 600 XL a little brother to the 800 XL or even a starter PC, kind of turned me off. But so what do you all think of the 600 XL? Do you like that smaller design compared to the 800 XL? So here we are in the reader comment section. Okay, I have to pull this one out. It covers 3 pages on a topic of pirating software. And it starts right here. Comes down here, covers all of this, and continues on the next page with all of that. If you ever logged onto a BBS in the 80s, BBS, aka bulletin board system, more than likely there are pirated games for download if you have the proper access. I think as kids we didn't realize the true impact this would have by ultimately taking money out of people's pockets and really committing a crime? Now, let me be clear about that. I'm not admitting any guilt here. I'm just saying what I know from people back in the 80s and their thoughts about this. Many just had the goal of getting the latest pirated software first on their BBS for bragging rights. You know, come on, check out my site, and I've got this latest game or latest wares, you know. Anyways, this long comment here from this person should really be considered as an educational piece. But the person that wrote this, you might know him. He's a true programmer. His name, Alexander Levins. I believe he passed away around 2002 or 2003. But his response here is something to admire. You know, he was probably, probably in his early 20s when this was written. He definitely made it clear why software was priced like it was. He starts off about being tired of hearing comments from people saying, you know, if a game was a little less in price, like maybe $10 or so less, then there would probably be less piracy. I totally agree with him that piracy would still continue. I mean, that's not the determination of whether they would pirate or not. But he goes on to lay out 4 common excuses for making light of pirating software, and then he destroys the reasoning. So excuse number 1 is the cost factor. He explains why the costs are justified with the expenses that go into making a game. Marketing, manufacturing, advertisement. So, you know, he can justify the costs for sure. Second excuse is that it doesn't hurt anyone. That's what people say, I guess. Now, he makes it very clear how this is taking money out of the programmer's pocket and the ramification it has when the bills need to be paid by that programmer. Totally understand that. And then the third excuse is the game isn't worth the price. So he counters by saying, then if that's the case, then fine, don't buy it. Really, it's like, then don't distribute it illegally if it's so bad. And then the final excuse is that there's nothing wrong with making a copy. He says that it's called stealing when you do that, and then there's the ethical and moral principles you would be crossing. And that's how he closed his comment on piracy. You know, it's truly a moral issue. But I think the only problem is that many people pirating software were just too young to understand or even care about the impact, so it just continued. No excuse, but that's pretty much, I think, what happened. I was drawn to this page because I remember my personal issues with my 410 and cassette tapes. This is basically a program, a recovery program, that will help recover some of the code that you saved on a cassette if you should receive an error when you try to load it. It says here often errors occur in the final data frame, which then stops, clears the program, and it resets all the pointers. So what this program here does, it allows you to get as much of the code as possible before that error occurs so that you have something to work with. You just need to have the first data frame complete in order for that to work. It's a very cool concept, but thankfully I only endured saving to cassette for a short time before I got my 1050 disk drive. This could definitely be something handy if you have old cassettes that had a lot of errors and you didn't know what to do with them. Well, here we are to the main topic of this issue, the Atari 600XL. Right off the bat, it mentions how prices were dropping in autumn of 1983 for the PCs. It says here, Texas Instrument dropped their TI-99 computer to a $49 price point, which affected many, including Atari. The Atari 1400, 1450, and the 1600XL were projects that were just put on indefinite hold, which we know now as a what-if dream. The Atari 400 and 800s went at bargain basement prices, and the 800XL had not appeared on shelves yet in the Massachusetts retail outlets, which is pretty crazy to think about because, you know, today you look back, the 800XL is pretty much like the flagship, right, for the 8-bits back then. But back in the 83, or when this article was written, which was autumn, it says, of 83, that left pretty much a 600XL available, but it was in limited quantity. And Antic decided to take a close look at what you get with that 600XL in this article. Now, I love that it goes right to the competition with the visuals here. It says that the beige and dark chocolate with brushed aluminum accents makes the Commodore 64 and the Tandy Coco look like toys in comparison. Also, they note that the keyboard layout didn't follow the 1200XL, which people didn't like. And then lastly, on the keyboard setup, it mentions the reset button, where it does a true reset, unlike how the 400 and the 800 systems reset. By that, it's suggesting when you press reset on the XL, it'll get you reset from the worst lockups without having to do a power off and on cycle. And then on the back here, the main difference is noted with the lack of the monitor 5-pin DIN. Now going to the insides here, I wasn't aware of this even though I have a 600XL, and I guess it's probably because I really didn't look closely at it. It says that all the chips are mounted in sockets for fast, easy servicing. I mean, it's not some are, some aren't, like the 800XL, which I have many of, and I can attest that some are socketed and some are soldered. Just depends upon, when and where it was manufactured. But never go by the label, and when you see in the bottom of these PCs, it's always best to open up and just check yourself. It also talks a little bit here about how BASIC is built in with 16K RAM that I mentioned earlier, and that self-test mode for high-level testing. But what really sticks to me is the ending point of this article, right over here. Now, the 800XL isn't taking the lead yet at this time, so this is why it was written as such. It says, quote, "It is up to us, the Atari community, whose word of mouth can do more to sell computers than a box of Hawkeyes, to educate our innocent neighbors and overcome Atari's sluggish marketing. Otherwise, we'll all end up marching to the beat of a new drummer whose initials are IBM." End quote. How true is that, right? I know I bragged about my Atari to others who owned Commodores or TIs back in the day, and you fast forward today, I'm still bragging on the Ataris. Still love them. Here's a game that sounds interesting. It's called Knights and Chalices by Bruce Willard. Now here's the premise. Your king has been robbed by an evil sorcerer of his magic chalice and, as a further insult, locked out of his own castle. So you are selected as a favorite lord or lady to retrieve the chalice and the key to open his castle gates. Sounds pretty simple, right? So for a one-player game, you're the knight that needs to avoid obstacles as you try to get that magic chalice and the castle key, and then you have to return back to the castle. And there's also a two-player mode on this, whereas you compete against your opponent to be the first knight to come back to the castle with that magic chalice and that castle key. The obstacles that you're trying to avoid are dragons, enemy archers, a troll, lakes and lava pools, and the evil sorcerer himself. I'm not going to lie, so this one I'm not typing in, but instead I have a version to run, because look at this. This is a little bit too much. So let's just check this out. Let me load it up and we'll play it and see how it goes. So, as I mentioned, I did not type this game in. I loaded it from my Side 3 cart. It was just way too long of a program to type in. Nice little title screen with the knight on a horse. Good sound effects. Nice colors. Knights and Chalices. And I guess the story or the premise on this game, the objective, is I am the knight and I need to get over to the forest, find myself the key to the castle as well as the chalice and bring it back. However, there are a lot of obstacles that will slow me down and it's all about time. Lord, Chris. The forest is to my right. And let's just go searching around. It's all about luck. And I can see I'm stopped. I can't go anywhere until he's done. Well, he just transported me. That was great. At the sword. You can see my inventory on top, right next to Knight 1. I got a green sword. Wow, I got the key. So now I just need to get the Chalice, which is great. Across the bridge. Now I'm on the other side of the forest. Let's look for that Chalice. Okay, I got what I need. Now to go back. They're just blocking me everywhere. Ugh. Congratulations, Lord Chris. Thy score was 72. Thy coat of arms is a kangaroo. High score, Lord Chris, 72. Not a bad game. I mean, it's challenging. There is really not a skill level involved. It's just, you know, you're going with luck and trying to make sure you don't land in spaces that are occupied that would slow you down. But it's a nice game. I guess it'd be pretty fun to play with someone and see who has the better luck on their side. But that is Knights and Chalices. I hope you enjoy that game. Now, I thought this was a nice idea someone had. This is issue number 15, so they had 14 previous issues that they had categorized key articles, product reviews, and even programs to make it easy to find. You can see it here shown on, you know, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. You know, this was like the 80s version of our Control F for the find and search. Pretty much you have everything here, what you need to find, and you just got to find that issue if you have it. So that pretty much wraps it up for this issue of Analog. I hope you enjoyed this month's video of Flashback 40 with Antics and Analog from January 1984. Just remember, keep that gaming passion from the past alive by living it today. Take care, everyone.